Welcome to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Heartland Crime Stoppers is a community-based program designed to help law enforcement solve crimes by providing a way for the public to phone in tips anonymously and receive cash rewards of up to $3,000 for information that leads to an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs. Heartland Crime Stoppers is funded through the State of Florida Office of the Attorney General Crime Stoppers Trust Fund and through donations from the community. Citizens and local businesses make Crime Stoppers work. On today's show, we'll talk with Chief Joe Hall of the Bartow Police Department. The mission of the Bartow Police Department is to improve the quality of life for the city's residents and visitors through shared community values and partnerships with the community and the city government. Chief Hall, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chip. Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you back. Now, the last time we had you on the show, we talked a little bit about how you ended up in Bartow, having come from Panama City. Just give us a brief rundown again, if you will.
Yeah, well, actually it started a long time ago. 1982, got a chance to go to the police academy and right out of college and joined the Callaway Police Department. Spent a couple years there, worked for the Bay County Sheriff's Office, and got a job opportunity at the City of Panama City Police Department that I couldn't pass up in the mid-'80s. Took that job and stayed there until my retirement. In 2009, I retired as the Deputy Chief of Police at the Panama City Police Department. Obviously I wasn't ready to quit working, so I thought I would expand upon that and started a search for a good home for my wife and I to move to and start another career. Wound up in Bartow in July of 2009. It's been about 10 years.
Yeah, when you started your career in law enforcement, did you ever envision or have the goal that you wanted to be chief of police somewhere?
No, that's a good question. I talk about this with the city manager often. You know, I don't know that anybody goes into that young stage of their life knowing exactly where they're going to wind up. Through the years, I was very fortunate to have opportunities to do different things. I became an investigator very young in my life. The Bay County Sheriff's Office at the time in the early 80s was wanting to start a street crimes unit. They were looking for young, energetic guys to fill that void. So that's how I wound up at the Sheriff's Office, got a lot of experience there. Then, like I said, I wound up at the Panama City Police Department. But at the Panama City Police Department, we had a very progressive police chief at the time. And as he noticed potential in certain individuals, he required you and sent you to different training academies throughout the country. When I was a homicide detective at Panama City Police Department, I was tapped with some of those. I was sent to different schools. The FBI National Academy was one of them. The Executive Institute in Tallahassee was another one. And during that time, I began to realize that management and law enforcement may be in my future. And I began to get promoted through the ranks, and eventually I was asked to be the Deputy Chief of Police in Panama City, and I spent 4.5 years, I think it was, as Deputy Chief of Police, and actually became very comfortable with that. I enjoyed that job, that aspect of law enforcement. So it wasn't until then I realized, you know, I'm gonna keep this going. I'm gonna keep doing things.
Well, I know that preparation and that training, your experiences have just really enhanced what you've been able to do here for the city of Bartow and the residents, and I know they're very glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here too, and you know, last 10 years we worked really hard on a lot of different topics. You know, we've worked to get the crime rate down. You know, we've done a lot of work with Crime Stoppers, getting tips in to solve crimes. We've done a lot of additional training. We've created new units, new teams of officers, which, you know, we'll get a chance to talk about here in a second. Our new drug team, our community service officers, and our partnerships with the community.
Yeah, it's law enforcement, you know, it still has the same function, but the jobs and the opportunities, I mean, as society changes and technology changes, you know, the police department changes. And tell us a little bit about the new program. I guess you have a new drug unit that is getting ready to, or is it actually already rolling, is it not?
Yeah, it's up and running now. They're on the street, have been for a couple months now. Back in 2012 is really when we embarked on this envision that we wanted the Bartow Police Department not to be the police department for the city of Bartow, but we wanted the police department to be a part of the community that they're serving. So what we did was we created the community service team. And the community service team served two functions, and those functions were simply that they were going to bridge that gap between the community and the police department, and the second one was they was going to serve as our street crimes unit. And we were going to analyze that after 12 months of service. So we did. During that time, we kept good records, we kept statistical numbers, and we looked at before and after numbers to determine whether or not it was a good, viable option for the city of Bartow to continue with. We saw a dramatic reduction of crime during that time frame, and I think, in fact, last time I was here, I think we talked about it. We saw a 34% reduction in crime in the city of Bartow in that 12-month period. In fact, that was the year that we had, one of the years that we had the lowest crime rate since we've seen since the 1970s in the city of Bartow. So,
that's quite an accomplishment.
So yeah, that was very positive. So it was a good program. So we've kept that up and running. After that year, 12 to 13, with through our tips that we received through Crime Stoppers, we were getting a large number of tips from the community. Once we built that relationship, people were beginning to call in and report, illegal drug activity, drug sales, drug houses, and then those tips were beginning to pile up. And we really were not poised to adequately address those tips. We did the best we could at the time. We had a detective assigned to the HIDTA task force, and we had him helping us with some of those issues. So in the last couple of years, we asked the city of Bartow to allow us to hire additional officers so that we could start working on training some folks to become what is now known as our narcotics team. We got that accomplished in the last 18 months. In the end of June, we got that team up and operational. They have been operational every day since June. And it turns out that this is going to be a successful program as well. As a result of the Crime Stoppers tips and the information that we're getting from the community, in the last 45 days, we've already seen a 40% increase in narcotic arrests in the city of Bartow.
That's amazing, and plus the support, from the Bartow City Commission to allow you the extra personnel to address the issues, because drugs, as you and I well know, it's just such a large problem, and so many people, I don't think really understand the gamut of that. No,
I don't think so either. And in reality, for most of us that have been in the business for a while, like you and I, we know that, in the city of Bartow does not routinely have violent crime. We don't deal with violent crime on a regular basis. The past month has been kind of an anomaly for us because of the 2 homicides that we've had. We haven't had a homicide in 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5 years. Mm-hmm. And we've had 2 in the last month. So that's not something we normally see. But what we do see, and if you look at the crime statistical data, like I do as the police chief on a daily basis, it's our property crime rate that is the key component to the crime rate of the city of Bartow. And most people would think that, that how important should that be? Well, that's pretty important. If you're the victim of a car burglary and all of your equipment has been stolen, that's pretty important to you. And so what we've really been focusing on is working on reducing that property crime rate. Now, in my opinion, the component with the property crime rate is, in my years of experience, has been completely tied to the narcotic trade, use, or sale within the city, and that's a pretty common trend. So, we launched that campaign to try to prevent the property crimes by, going to social media, coming on your show and talking about the issues that we're dealing with, and trying to get the public to lock their doors. All you got to do is roll your car windows up, lock your doors, and that'll knock out 50% of the crime. The other component of that is we had to deal with the folks that were on the street that was doing the thefts and doing the stealing as a result of selling property to get cash money to buy narcotics, the dealers and the users and what have you. So we just did not have that component available to us at the police department until recently, and with the addition, the added staff that we were able to hire. Obviously, we weren't going to hire new recruits to put them on the street to do narcotics investigations, but it provided us an opportunity to put some seasoned veterans out there that had gotten training. We made sure they had the DEA training and all the necessary training that was what I felt would make me feel more comfortable without them working the street. And I think right now it's paying off. We'll see how the crime rate looks at the end of the year. I hope it's better as a result.
Yeah, drugs really seem to be. We get a number of tips on drugs, throughout Polk Highlands and Hardy County. Probably about 75% of our tips that come in are on drugs.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating for everyone. It's frustrating for the community, for the tipster, for the officers, for the city commission, for the staff of the city. I mean, because people have sometimes the thought that, well, I left a tip, or I called in somebody doing a drug house next door, and they expect something to be done the next day. They kick in the door or whatever, and it's frustrating for everyone. So maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. We were talking about a little while ago, there's different kinds of tips, and those tips that come in, like the Magnolia Walk tip that we were talking about earlier with the damage to the vehicles or whatnot, those tips come in. We've already investigated the scene, and we're looking for information of who done it, so that we can wrap the case up and get restitution to those individuals. That's pretty simple. That takes a couple of days, and detectives will work through the court system. When you're dealing with narcotics tips, the information, first of all, the information can't be deemed reliable until the investigators, conduct a thorough investigation. And then once they do, they must come up with enough evidence to either secure a search warrant or secure an arrest warrant or something of that magnitude. And if you can imagine, not knowing the specific date, time, and incident when things are going to occur in the future, it's virtually impossible for them to do that unless they spend their man hours conducting an investigation. And, none of us wants an innocent person arrested, so the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into actually creating the probable cause to conduct that investigation is quite substantial. You'll never see, information come in and the police show up, kick a door in, make drug arrests. It just doesn't happen. You have to have the evidence. You have to prove to the state attorney's office that this is a viable, legitimate case. You have to go through the legal processes to protect everyone's rights, and then you move in to make those arrests. And the frustration will continue from there. Just because an arrest is made does not make that just simply go away. People do not routinely, typically, go to prison after a drug arrest, unless they have a substantial history.
Because you have the sentencing and then the trial, or the trial and then the sentencing, of course.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can drag out for 1, 2 years.
Yep. Yes, it sure can. And just in the 10 years that I've been here, we've worked several major cases with the Sheriff's Office on narcotics investigations. The investigations alone could take 1 or 2 years, depending on how large of an organization, how widespread it is. It's just not as simple as the typical everyday crime and a tip and an arrest and end the story.
Yes. Chief, we're going to ask you to stick around for a few minutes for our second segment.
Will do.
Crime Stoppers provides a way for local law enforcement to receive information on crimes while keeping the people providing that information anonymous. These efforts increase tips, which in turn solve more crimes and identify criminals in our community. Here's a look at some of our most recent cases.
The Polk County Sheriff's Office continues to investigate a home invasion shooting that resulted in the death of a Dundee woman during the late night hours of Thursday, June 27, 2019. The home invasion occurred around 10:20 p.m. in the area of Danielle Street between Garrison and Foose. 25-year-old Chevron Collins was found inside an apartment with a gunshot wound. She succumbed to her injuries on Friday morning, June 28th. The reward has been increased to $10,000 for the tip submitted to Heartland Crime Stoppers that results in the arrest of the person or persons who committed this murder. Detectives from the Polk County Sheriff's Office are hoping someone can come forward with the information regarding an armed robbery at the Harvest Meat Market, 444 Old Kathleen Road in Lakeland, that occurred Saturday, September 14th at around 7:14 p.m. Two men armed with semi-automatic guns robbed the store at gunpoint, forcing the employees into the walk-in freezer. Both suspects are black males and each wore a dark hoodie, beanie hat, and gloves. One had a blue backpack. They fled the scene in a silver new model Kia Sportage. Detectives with the Polk County Sheriff's Office are investigating a fraud in which a Polk County resident had her checking account compromised. The victim was notified by her bank that her account had insufficient funds to cover the check from her account. The attached photos are of the man who cashed the check. It is unknown if he is from Polk County or elsewhere, but hopefully someone will recognize him. Detectives from the Polk County Sheriff's Office are trying to identify the man in this picture. The photo was taken at a Mid-Florida bank in Sebring, and he used a clone debit card to withdraw $200 at an ATM on July 28th. He is suspected in several similar crimes in Polk County. These three men are wanted for theft from the Best Buy store in Davenport, Posner Park, on Monday, August 26th at 3 in the afternoon.
If you have any information on any of the cases you've just seen or any information on an unsolved crime, please contact Heartland Crime Stoppers and leave an anonymous tip. The toll-free tip line is 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also leave an anonymous web tip by going to www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com and click on the Give a Tip tab, or by going to www.p3tips.com. Don't forget, you can download our free P3 Tips app on your smart device. Whichever way you choose to leave a tip, you will remain 100% anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000.
Welcome back to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. The Bartow Police Department prides itself on the ability to provide police services with pride and integrity, keeping that hometown personal atmosphere. Joining us for the second segment is Chief Joe Hall of the Bartow Police Department. Now, before we took the break, you had mentioned about the incident that happened at Magnolia Walk. Just kind of go over that again and what was happening there.
Yeah, well, back in the summer, early summer, we had several cases where we had segments of neighborhoods within the community that vehicles had been damaged. In this particular case, individuals had run around through the neighborhood spray painting some garage doors and some cars, and just prior to that we had a lot of cars in a nearby neighborhood that someone just went through the neighborhood and slashed tires. You know, it all occurred in the middle of the night, so naturally you don't typically have a whole lot of witnesses available to you that the police can work upon. In these particular cases, you know, we were able to go through the neighborhood and identify those homeowners that had security cameras that captured some video footage that that might be helpful to us, and we were able to get that information out to the public. And essentially, what happened was, thanks to Crime Stoppers and the tip line, we had people that saw the video, called into Crime Stoppers, and told us who the suspects were, and we were able to identify them clearly, go talk to them, and they admitted their parts in the crime. We were able to resolve that whole crime issue.
I'm just curiously, and I'm sure our viewers are probably asking, did they say why they did all this?
You know, there really wasn't a reason. It was just mischief. If you, I mean, they admitted their part. What they actually said was they thought they were using paint that caused no damage. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you know as well as I do, Chip. You wake up in the morning and see your garage door painted with black spray paint, and it's going to upset you. That's we had a lot of homes damaged during that little spree.
And plus to the cost of having cars repainted or detailed, trying to get the stuff off, it's just...
Well, sure. And there's costs that people don't realize that go along with this too. You know, when this occurs and you have to call the police department has to send employees out there. That's a cost to the taxpayers. Then the police department has to rely on the help of Crime Stoppers to get some information through so that we can work it. That's 2 or 3 days that an individual at the Bartow Police Department is going to be tied up doing something that really the time could have been used somewhere else. So the costs can add up quite quickly.
Yeah, but it's so important to those victims, that have suffered, the slashed tires and, because they want it. Now,
Yeah.
Magnolia Walk, that's a gated community, is it not?
Yeah, it sure is.
Do you think that because somebody lives in a gated community that maybe sometimes they have that false sense that they're untouchable more or less, or it'll keep some of these people out?
Well, I don't know that really exists. Certainly, I would think, and most people would probably think that you're much more secure in a gated community, and I would certainly hope that you would be more secure than if you did not live in a gated community. But really and truly, none of us are immune to what may happen to you as a result of some criminal activity. Currently with all we talked about it earlier, with all the new innovative things that are coming to law enforcement and our ability to investigate and detect crime, the one thing we cannot do is forecast the future of when something's going to occur. If we could, we could have someone there to prevent that. But I'll take myself for an example. I mean, I own property in the city of Bartow. I live in the city of Bartow, and since I've been here, I've been a victim of burglary myself. I would have thought, based on the security that I had in place and the fence and the gates and all the other things that was in place, that the likelihood of me becoming a victim was slim to none. Where there's a will, there's a way, and it's going to happen. The best thing that we can do is take every single precaution you can think of to protect your property as an individual, and hope that through those preventative efforts, we have less crime. Less crimes, less victims.
Yeah, I too have been the victim of a burglary at my house, and they had tried to come in through my sliding glass doors. I have those little flip bars,
Right.
that the doors, you can't pry them open. So they just went to one of the bedroom windows and smashed it out and crawled through. So as they say, locks only keep your friends out.
Yeah, that's true.
If someone wants to break in, they're going to break in. All you can do is make it difficult, have enough warnings that maybe they will decide to go somewhere else. But
yeah, that's true. But the key here, now remember, the key for all of us is that although if you do everything you can possibly do to protect yourself, protect your property, there's always that chance that something's going to happen to you. But what we want to do at the police department is get those individuals that are causing these criminal acts off of the street. And the only way we can do that is what we talked about earlier, through our partnership with the community. And our partnership with the community can come in the form of anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers to tell us about what's going on so that we can deal with that.
And of course, a good thing, if that tip ends in an arrest or recovery of drugs, recovery of stolen property, then that tipster is eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000, which surprisingly, a lot of people, when they make tips with us, aren't interested in the reward. They just want the crime to stop, or to report the person that needs some kind of help for a drug problem or whatever it may be. And of course, there are some that are interested solely by the reward. So it's a win-win for us and for the community and for you guys.
And for law enforcement, that's right, absolutely.
Now, one of the things that we had talked about, is, and it takes just a small group of people just to really cause your stats to skyrocket, especially in burglaries. And I know you have a program going now called the 9 o'clock routine.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell us what that is.
Well, that's a social media effort that we've embarked on about probably a year or so ago, I guess now. And like we talked about earlier, you know, in our small community of Bartow, our biggest issue is property crimes. And Lynn Bryan, our specialist that deals with these type of issues, she keeps very specific statistical data for us on cars that are broken into, businesses that are broken into, homes that are broken into, and whether the vehicles and businesses and homes were locked and secure or unsecure during that time frame, or during the crime spree. What she noticed and told and talked to me about is that we were routinely on a monthly basis seeing 75 to 95% of the burglaries in the city of Bartow was unsecured property.
That many?
That high.
70 and 90% because somebody had left their vehicle unlocked.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe, but that's the number. That is the actual number. And there was a couple of times where, you know, where we dropped down into the 50s, which we thought we were making some progress. But you know, it eventually it went right back up. And I think those things are a result of, you know, Bartow is a small community. Most of the folks, you know, are multi-generational residents. You know, their roots go generations back from being residents of the city of Bartow, and it's been not a crime-free, but a low-crime area to live in. You get comfortable living in those areas. I understand that. I'm from a small town myself. But because of that statistical data, Lynn came up with the idea that she had seen at one of the crime prevention conferences that we had sent her to start this routine and send it out and try to remind people that before you go to bed, you know, at least, you know, roll your windows up, lock your doors, and take your valuables out. And we began that probably about a year and a half ago.
I know you see that quite a bit, and it's just that reminder because I'm sure if people are like I am, sometimes you get in a hurry, you know you have to go back out to the car later to get something, and maybe you intend to go back and lock it.
Yep.
And then you get busy in the house, you get sidetracked, there's something that you need to do, and before you know it, you haven't gone back out and locked your car.
I'm telling you, you know, just mentioning that made me think of two cases recently. You know, it doesn't take but a split second for someone to break into your car and steal your property. Recently, we had a case where a gentleman just went to his car to get ready to go to work. Remembered he left his cell phone in the house, went in the house, get the cell phone, come back out, and that fast, property was gone out of the car. Don't take but a second, so keep it locked.
Just be aware of your surroundings. Probably there was someone watching him from around the corner or somewhere else, and like I say, it just same thing happened to me one day playing golf. I put my golf clubs in the back of my truck to put the golf cart up, came back out to my truck, my clubs were gone.
Yeah.
So
it don't take but a second. You know, in Bartow, you know, I mean, it's grown over the years. We're up to about 20,000 residents, but you know, if you look at the city, you know, you can walk most anywhere in the city of Bartow and get from point A to point B. So that transient traffic is very prevalent here.
Yeah. Well, Chief Hall, thank you for taking time from your busy day to come to the Crime Stopper Show, and we appreciate your sharing your thoughts and your concerns with us.
Thank you, Chip. Good to be here.
For more information on the Bartow Police Department, you can visit them on the web at www.cityofbartow.net or follow them on Facebook at Bartow Police. That's going to do it for this edition of Crime Stoppers. Keep in mind, Heartland Crime Stoppers is an organization that helps law enforcement solve crimes through anonymous tips and monetary rewards. It encourages a cooperative partnership between law enforcement, the media, and the community to ensure security and enhance our quality of life here in Polk County. For more information on us, you can check us out on the web at heartlandcrimestoppers.com or follow us on Facebook at Heartland Crime Stoppers. Until next time, keep in mind, it's a crime, and you can help make sure that they don't get away with it.